Hey, what's going on, guys? Today on the channel we're finally going to be talking about the iPhone 15 Pro Max. So this is going to be my full review of this phone after using it here for several months. So let's go ahead and jump into this video. Okay, so first thing we'll talk about review wise here is the design. So the 15 Pro is now made of titanium. So no longer do we have stainless steel construction. We now have a titanium outer band and construction here on this phone, and I think the titanium looks really nice, especially in this natural finish. Now, not only did they do a titanium phone, they also made the edges of the phone a little bit more rounded. And because of that, this phone is probably the most comfortable iPhone you can hold in your hand. This was the first thing I said when I took it out of the box. It was immediately what I noticed. This phone is so comfortable to hold in my hand that it's actually the first iPhone that I've ever used without a case. I did pick up the Apple Clear case for this phone, but unfortunately that case, I just hated the thing. I just completely hated it. So I took it off and I said, you know what? Let's try to use this thing without the case. And to my surprise, it's actually worked out very well. I highly recommend that if you're going to use your new shiny new iPhone here without a case, that you do go ahead and pick up the natural titanium finish. If you get the darker colors, they could scratch more easily, and they'll also show fingerprints a whole lot more. Now don't get me wrong, this natural titanium still shows fingerprints on it if you look at it in the right lighting, but it hides it so much better than the other phones would. But yeah, the construction of this phone is just awesome. Such a premium feel, very comfortable holding the hand, and I just love it. I really love using this phone without a case. Another thing that titanium does for you is it makes your phone a lot lighter. So with the stainless steel iPhones, they definitely had some heft to it, and that can kind of give you a nice premium feeling. But with this titanium, it is noticeably lighter, especially if you're coming from a stainless steel iPhone, whether it's a 13 Pro, 14 Pro, whatever, you definitely notice it. And the crazy thing is, I noticed that even though this is a max size phone, it felt lighter than my 13 Pro did, which is pretty incredible. Another thing here to do with the design is down here at the bottom. So no longer do we have a lightning port here on the new iPhones. Now this was kind of a EU rule. Well, it needed to happen anyways. Apple needed to go ahead and change over, but the transition for me really wasn't too bad. I mean, I did have to pick up a couple more cables because I did have a lot of lightning accessories. You know, I had to pick up a new charger for my nightstand, and I also had to pick up a cable for the car. But other than that, that's really all I had to do. Now, Apple didn't really give us a lot of details about their USB-C port other than the fact that the charging speeds are the same as the Lightning. I kind of think Apple dropped the ball there, but I'm sure they also weren't planning on switching to USB-C as quickly as they had to. I'm sure over the years, Apple will improve the USB-C port, give us the fastest transfer speeds and charging speeds as possible. Another notable thing here with the iPhone design is we no longer have the mute switch over here. We now have a single button that is called the action button. Now, I'll be quite honest with you guys. For me at this time, the action button really ain't doing a lot for me. I don't really find myself going to use it that often. At first I had it set for the camera, but then I changed it to my flashlight function. I felt like that was a little bit more useful for me, especially since I was so used to just simply swiping to open the camera like we always do, or holding down the little camera button on your lock screen. But yeah, the action button is here now. You can still use it as a silent mute switch up there if you want to, but I think in the future we'll see kind of more developers do things that actually utilize this button. But for now, for me, it's just kind of there. And the last detail here about the design is the display. Now there's really not much new to talk about here with the display. It's pretty much the exact same one we saw on the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max. However, of course, on the Pro phones, we still have that 120 Hz display. We also have the Dynamic Island, which the Dynamic Island has made its way now to the 15 lineup as well. So no more notches for us, but the Dynamic Island, I think, is a nice change. And for somebody that's coming from a 13 Pro like I did, well, this is definitely worth the upgrade in my opinion. I just love the dynamic island. It changes all the time depending on what you're doing, and it just shows you a lot of useful information at the right time. So yeah, the display on this is still fantastic. OLED panel, very bright, and the dynamic island just works so well together. One other thing about the display though that I'll go ahead and mention is that the edges are actually a little bit thinner. So you'll notice thinner bezels here on the 15 Pro phones. So yeah, just a nice little subtle change there. Now there's always two main things here with Pro iPhones, and that has to do with performance and of course the camera. So first off, let's talk about performance. So this phone is significantly faster than my 13 Pro was, and if you're thinking it's going to be much more faster than your 14, well, that's not necessarily the case. Yes, this phone does have the A17 Pro chip. It's really good. It is more performance as usual, but I don't think you should be running out and upgrading to it. You are going to notice that it has great GPU performance, great for gaming, intensive applications, but that's how the 14 Pro Max is as well. Now with all that, there was a little bit of issue that this phone was having early on in its launch, and that was an overheating issue. Now I will tell you that I definitely noticed this on my phone. It was getting very, very hot. It was to the point where you almost couldn't touch it. But anyways, Apple has since addressed that with a software update, although there are some instances where my phone still gets pretty warm, but my 13 Pro also got pretty warm during those times as well. So I think Apple has pretty much resolved that overheating problem, but it just was kind of interesting that was happening. Now Apple claimed that they didn't throttle anything down or reduce performance in any way, but they had to do something, right? I mean, to prevent that overheating. So overall performance, as usual on a Pro phone, it's really good, and the 120 Hz display makes things feel even snappier and much quicker. Also with the latest Wi-Fi and 5G modems in here, this phone just feels lightning fast, handles everything like a champ. Let's talk about the camera real quick, because there are some improvements with the camera. Now as usual, the max sized iPhone gets more camera features than the Pro phone, but really the only thing we have here is the 5x telephoto lens. So Apple's now added that 5x telephoto here on the Max, and it gives you pretty cool looking pictures. I'll put some up on the screen, just kind of scroll through. Also, this gives you the ability to zoom all the way up to 25 times with that 5x lens. So that is another cool little thing there as well. So you can kind of play around with that camera. You can get some pretty cool shots, especially with that telephoto. But as usual, in my opinion, iPhone still has one of the best camera systems out there, and definitely one of the best video recording cameras out there as well. So it takes great pictures. Night mode still does it pretty well. I will say, when you are zooming in with that new telephoto or that 25 times zoom, it can get a little grainy, especially if it's a lower light situation. Also, another thing that they have in here is the ability to kind of change your photo to a portrait photo after it's been taken. So that's a feature of the new A17 Pro chip. So basically, if you take a photo and your iPhone recognizes that it could be converted to a portrait, then you'll have the option in the Photos app. You can see the little portrait icon up there in the top left. You can tap on that and you can instantly change that photo to a portrait, and you can also change it back if you would like. So yeah, a couple little camera improvements there. Pretty nice. And with all this performance and things like that, you may be wondering how the battery life is. For me personally, the battery life is a huge jump for me from my 13 Pro. Obviously the max size phone has room for a bigger battery, but this Max phone really has the same battery as the 14 Pro Max. So really, there's almost no difference if you're coming from that phone. Now with this phone here, personally, I hardly ever get it below 50% now. I mean, it just has so much battery, and I'm not really using my phone as much as I used to. So really, I finish the day mostly around 60, maybe 70 something percent. But yeah, battery life on this does very well. I do a lot of video recording for this channel with my iPhone, and the battery really doesn't go down that much. So overall, what do I think about the iPhone 15 Pro Max? Do I think it was a worthy upgrade for me? I would say yes. I mean, I do get a ton of features that I did not have on my 13 Pro. Now, if you're coming from the 14 Pro, 14 Pro Max, well, you might want to hold off another year or two. I'd say when you're upgrading your phone, I think 3 years, 3 to 4 years is probably a good mark. Maybe more like 3. 3 max, 2 to 3, I don't know. Somewhere around that range is a good time to upgrade your phone because, you know, if you're just going from your 14 to your 15, it's not necessarily that big of a jump unless you just absolutely have to have the new titanium and USB-C, then there's no need to upgrade. But yeah, guys, this phone's been fantastic. Using it without a case has been great. It's super comfortable to hold. It's a good looking phone. I actually have no damage, no scratches, anything like that. I just wipe it off with a little microfiber cloth like once a week, and it still looks brand spanking new. So yeah, this phone's been great. I think Apple's addressed the overheating issues, different things like that. But yeah, I'm definitely glad that I went ahead and got the new iPhone. But anyways, guys, that's all I got for you today in this video. Thank you all for watching as always, and I will catch you all in the next one.